Welcome to this month's episode of Best Fails, the place where failure isn't feared, it's explored. If you are new here, Best Fails is a brave space where we unpack the stories we often hide. We look at what went wrong, what it revealed, and how it shaped us. Today's guest is JK McQuinn, who speaks with remarkable vulnerability about the discomfort of ambiguity and the courage it takes to sit with the unknown. She invites us to name the shame that often shadows our failures and to share it so it loses its grip. In one of the most grounding moments of our conversation, JK reminds us that nature does not do perfection. So, like nature, our failures, cracked, uneven, unfinished, can become the very things that make us distinct, resilient, and beautifully human. This episode is an invitation to embrace imperfection, honor complexity, and stand out, not in spite of our failures, but because of them. So, let's get into it. Second time around, JK. Welcome to Best Fails, the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are very welcome. I am delighted to have you here. This is our second going around because we had an epic Best Fails the first time.
Indeed, we did.
90 minutes of conversation that was not recorded.
But recorded in our hearts and minds, Alison.
It was a moment of connection for us.
All the best stuff happened there.
Exactly. But some good stuff will happen in this
Absolutely.
one as well. Oh my. So I'm going to give the audience a bit of a understanding of who you are, who JK is, but then we're going to get to know you a little bit more personally. So here goes. So JK, Jenny Kate McQuinn, is founder, coach, and facilitator of Where the Mind Grows, a nature-based coaching and consultancy based in Yorkshire. Before setting up her coaching ventures, JK was a senior leader with a background in public, private, and third sector health and employability services, which included leading people's, teams, projects, and partnerships. Her experience ranges from working in a medium secure psychiatric setting to working on community-led projects focused on finding employment for people with a variety of recovery needs. She has successfully managed teams of people with diverse lived experiences, such as offending, addiction, and mental health issues. She has also worked with and led refugees and asylum seekers who have experienced FGM, trafficking, and modern slavery, and have had to make space to consider their experiences as part of her leadership practice. JK left her role in leadership to start her own coaching and facilitation practice, recognizing that many of the impactful organizations she worked for, who were caring for some of society's biggest needs and issues, often overlook essential time, energy, and cultures to help staff maintain their own well-being. Through nature-based and regenerative coaching approaches, JK now helps individuals and teams reconnect with themselves in nature, getting curious about what resilience, balance, and compassionate and courageous communication truly means in these complex times. Helping explore ways that people and planet can value their uniqueness and thrive. Inspired by nature, JK embraces failure as a part of learning and development for herself personally and the people she works alongside, with one of her favorite mantras being, nature doesn't do perfection. JK, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, we can embrace nature doesn't do perfection.
It does not do perfection.
And neither do we, Alison.
Neither do we. For sure. Because this is a do-over right here. This is an indication that we did not get it perfect the first time. So let's get to know you a little bit better personally. So tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit rather, about how you grew up, about your family, and all of that. Well, little JK.
Tiny weeny JK.
Exactly.
So I spent the first 4 or 5 years of my life like living in the centre of Nottingham, and then moved out to a village in Nottinghamshire. Various different reasons. One was to be closer to like my mum's dad and things like that, like my granddad. So I kind of had like a little dip into urban life,
Yeah.
but still was very connected with like nature and things. And then when we went into the countryside, I was pretty feral, to be honest. So I was like, and it's really interesting now looking back, because one of the reasons that we moved to the countryside was because a lot of the schools, my brother's like 4 years older than me, and a lot of the schools, they were really like the rising knife crime and things like that in Nottingham was kind
Oh,
of happening, and they were starting to talk about like getting, like check the ones in and stuff to check people in high school, and he was going up to high school, so like my mum and dad were just like, let's take us out into the country.
yeah,
It was a shock to the system for me though, Alison, because I can remember I was thinking about this the other day. I I went from obviously Nottingham was very multicultural, and I went
hmm.
to going to a primary school that was just a sea of whiteness, and it was such a shock to the system. My normality, my
Wow.
dad had worked in Nigeria when I was like before I was born and when I was really young, and I was really reflecting on this the other day and thinking like that was actually there wasn't really much preparation
For
done for that
that.
transition kind of through into that space of like actually having to ask like I remember saying where is everyone, and of course I just
But
didn't have the language to
yeah.
use. um but
Yeah.
yeah, like that was I think that because one of the things that I really enjoy about like nature is the vibrancy and the difference, and my brain's very wired that way, and like lots of innovation and thinking. And I
Yeah.
think that was like quite an isolating factor, which is probably why nature was one of the things that like pulled me out into like an adventurous space, because it had
All
interest.
the variety, diversity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, I grew up with my brother. I grew up with my brother. My brother's like had mental health issues growing up. My dad's definitely neurodiverse, and or
Yeah.
was, sorry, when he was alive. And yeah, so it was a really like quite a creative environment to kind of to be in and grow up in, and kind of
Yeah.
have this like land and space, because we were really lucky. Like my mum's house, we've got an orchard and things like
Yeah.
that, so I had access to like learning about growing, and ended up
Yeah.
going to this like school where there was like a little beck that you could a stream that ran through it, and there was lots of kind of
Yeah.
natural settings, and quite idyllic, but definitely quite a shock to the system to have gone from what was my reference point and then kind of going into that as well.
So, this is a podcast about failure. So I
Yeah.
am always curious about what people's first experience of failure, first memory of failure, what that was.
Yeah. So, well, it's a really random one, but it
Yeah.
was it was when I was still in Nottingham and I'd gone to play school, and I was bustling around in the group of people, and I went to hold who I thought was my mum's hand, like for whatever reason. And when I looked up, it was a woman that ran the play school, and it was such a shock. But it felt like the feeling of failure that we know as an adult now, and I've always really remembered it so clearly. It was this failure of I was almost like maybe there was an element of understanding shame for the first time, or embarrassment of
Mhm.
like, oh, I didn't know it was I thought that was my mum, because
Yeah.
my assumption with my head down kind of in the bustle of being around everyone else was just like, oh, I would just know my mum, like there'd never been this
Yes.
reference point of that. And then looking up and seeing someone that doesn't
Hmm.
represent the person you think they are when you're like 3 or 4, I must have been, and
Yeah.
like such a shock and such a like layering of emotions that obviously at
Yeah.
that age you don't really have the language. You can't say, oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing, like you might do when you're a
Yeah.
teenager or an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can remember like the feltness and the fear and the like complexity of
Yeah.
something that was probably 3 seconds, sorry, of
Yeah.
experience, and it feeling so long, and like the real cogs kind of going in my head of like, what does this mean? Where is my mom? Is it safe to stay with this person? The
Right.
layers of that
Yeah.
like perceived kind of failure. And so yeah, that like really stands out as a very, very early sense of it. actually. And it's weird because, you know, failure was an okay thing in my family growing up. It wasn't like
Yeah.
um it wasn't anything to kind of be embarrassed about. It was navigated by the parents in totally different ways. Like my dad's
Yeah.
was a bodge jobber who like would procrastinate and then kind of get on and do things. And my mum was definitely like is more of a like warrior. Like,
Right.
I'll overthink this failure so it doesn't happen kind of thing, and I kind of sit in the middle of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely the first like sense. If I look back now and think what does failure feel like, that's the closest that I can get to
Oh
that
no.
feeling of it.
So I've got a bit of a game for us to
I
play.
love games.
So what I'll ask you to do is choose some questions between 1 to 24, and we'll answer them. So I'll go first to give you time to think, because as my guest on this show, I really should just take that hit.
Oh, you're so kind.
Take that hit and go first, and then we'll go from there. So what is the first number
Well,
that you
I'm
want
gonna
to?
have to go with 19 because it's my favourite number, which might be a bit predictable.
Yeah. And tell us about the 19 again, because it was so good.
Well, so 19 is my favourite number because 1 and 9 add up to 10, and I really like the numerology. But
I
also, like,
love
it just
it.
feels like I don't know, there must be some science or psychology in it, but I've always really liked the number 90.
I have never heard anybody say 19 before, but your reasoning for it is so good. So good. So number 19 says, if you knew that in 1 year you would suddenly die, would you change anything about the way you are now living, and why? So yes, I haven't had an experience this weekend. So this weekend I made a decision that I would not do any work related stuff. And by work I mean my own work, like podcast related work and so forth. Outside was lovely and I went outside. I spent the majority of Saturday outside. Sunday I did some house chores, and then the afternoon I was like, you got to go outside, and I went outside. And it was the most, I would say, spiritual. There was like I felt so free, so open. Like if life was filled with possibilities, happiness, with all of the sometimes the pressure, all the pressure that I was placing on myself, and that actually has a physical is like a physical weight on your body, was gone. I was walking on Saturday and I remember putting up my hands like this and
Oh.
just like it felt so fantastic. So I would spend a lot more time in nature because I don't think I spend enough. And to tell you the truth, because of the weather, I am not really particularly excited about that. But I do think there are other things that I can do, or other ways that I can enjoy nature, even when outside is rainy or whatever, than just simply not doing it. But also spend more time with my loved ones, with my family, my nieces. They are growing, and it's so interesting to see their little minds like developing their personalities. They're having their own thoughts and perspectives about life. I want to spend more time with them and my parents because they're also getting older. But because I'm an adult now, I like talking to them, like
Yeah, yeah, like it's a joy.
exactly. I would love to spend more time with them. So those would be my two things.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like such a fascinating question, isn't it? Because it's like in a if you had a year to fill your life with the things that you want, is like the what how I connect with it. And I think like the themes on time and space that like you're talking about are definitely the things that I kind of share, that I would lean into more. I'd make more time for connection, both with people that I love, but also just those fleeting moments of connections with strangers that happen. Like I've always been one of those people that has a conversation with someone at the supermarket, like checkouts,
Yeah.
and know their life story by the end of it, or just facilitate
Yeah.
conversation. And I think when the world can feel quite heavy, or if you only knew you had a year of like
Yeah.
changing things up, like those little intricate moments of finding and hearing those connections with other people is always really enriching. And I would still spend more time out in nature. I know I'm really lucky to kind of work in a woodland most of the time, and to make weave in my I've been very conscious about, just because I have that space, it's for me as much as it is for everyone else,
Yeah.
to help share it with them. And I really take that quite serious. It's something I do
Yeah.
take seriously. Is like, uh, as you read from my bio, we're surrounded by amazing people doing amazing things who are burning out in the current systems.
Yeah.
And so I take my own accountability of not becoming one of those people in my own business kind of really
Yeah.
seriously. And I don't get it right all the time, but the feedback comes quicker. I notice it
Yeah.
more profoundly. So I think it
Yeah.
would be kind of spending more time just in creative, joyous connections, probably.
Yeah. Love that. So, final question, what's going to be your final number?
Oh, right, let's go 20.
This is a nice one. What does friendship mean to you?
Ah,
So, yes. So, for me, friendship is really layered, and it has very different meanings. So like for me, I've got like really close friends that I find fill like some really specific needs. So I've got my best friend who I've known her from 11. She knows me, like she
yeah,
she knows, like I can tell her things and she understands immediately where I'm coming from. She has spent a lifetime knowing me. So when I'm around her, I feel known. I don't have to explain certain things. I say certain things. She would see something, she'd be like, Alison, this is you.
yeah,
Like, and it is accurate. It is true. Like she knows me. I love that. And then I've got like over the last couple of years, especially since being here, I've connected with people in a deep way over like our development and
mm,
turn, and this is people in Barbados as well, which is such an interesting thing. But over like having like really deep conversations about our struggles and how we can support one another as part of that. So that has been great and that's been really good. But one of the things that I miss, especially since coming here in terms of friendship, is that community friendship. So it's not deep. It isn't you know, that you're no yes you're known, but like just being able to go out with the community and have fun. I was in church back in Barbados.
mm,
I had a very big church family, and we did so many different things together. I mean, we traveled and went to conferences together. We would like just go randomly like and eat stuff. Like there were things like that we just did. And I wouldn't say that they were necessarily my close friends, but somebody would say, y'all, anybody hungry, let's go and get something to eat or something like that. And I really miss that. Like to me,
mm.
there's a friendship element in there that makes you feel connected to something that is beyond just you, and it fills that. It's almost like dessert. So I would call
Oh, I
like
love
my
it.
like my friendships and my best friend and the other ones, those might be like the main food, like your main dish.
Yeah,
But that community type friendship to me is that dessert, that sweetness, that you might not have at every meal, but it adds something.
yeah.
So I would say friendship means all of those
Oh,
things to
I
me.
love that. I love that meal analogy as well. Like
Yeah.
friendships, like, and I think for me, it's those different layers of. It's really being able to define what the friendships are that you need, the quality of
Yeah.
friendships that you need, and yeah. So friendship for me, I think one of the things that really, really comes to mind is being able to be yourself around other people. And I know that we have different versions of ourselves and we adapt
Yeah.
different ways and we bring different things, but like there's not having to be a compromise
Yes.
in who you are. And I think it's like a, friendship is that freeing, that freeing
Yeah.
moment, whether you're freeing yourself or freeing each other. And I've been really mindful of that, thinking about some of
Yeah.
my friendships over the year. And, are we enhancing each other's life, or is it time for things to kind of
Yeah.
end or move on, and things like that. But
uh
also those unexpected friendships that can happen in a short space of time, or kinships, and I think as you get older, maybe there's less chance to have the friendships that you had when you were younger that were really like
yeah.
tight bonds, but they're all like seeing the opportunities to find friendship with people in
Yeah.
unexpected places, I think is really
Yeah.
a lovely thing as well. But yeah, it's definitely down to like that kind of just being able to be yourself, and in a way like being independent of each other, like knowing that the person's always there. Like I've still friends with my group, the group of lads that I grew up with, because I was a bit of a like social butterfly in the social groups between everyone,
Yeah.
and I didn't really like belong to any of the groups, whereas like some people like wanted me to be part of their kind of group, and I just kind
Yeah.
of flitted. Like on Monday I might be hanging around with my village group, then it was like the people from the bus, and then it was the lads,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
still friends with like the close group of guys that I grew up with, and have some of the
Oh, no.
most wonderful kind of connections with them. And
Yeah.
yeah, like they're like almost like a different deliciousness of friendship in
Yeah.
a way, because they're all
Yes.
really emotionally intelligent men. They can have conversations with you.
Yeah.
They can express their feelings to myself. That's, I think, is quite a rarity for a lot of men. And I take the luxury of that. I take the luxury, that the
Yeah.
gift that I've got those people as my friends, and that
Yeah.
they will tell me if they're having a hard time, or
Yeah.
as I think that's what it is. But I think it's playfulness as well, and
Uh,
adventures and stuff like
yeah.
that. But yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually.
Yeah. Nice and layered, because
Yeah.
a friendship isn't just one thing.
No, exactly. It's a dessert. I love that. I'm gonna start thinking about who are my dessert friends. Or just get a text message like, "You're my dessert."
Is there?
No
Yeah.
context.
No context at all. I do have a group here that are beginning to morph into my dessert, and I really enjoy them. But I think that I can also be a lot more intentional about building it out a little bit more. So
Mm,
that's my promise to myself, to
nice.
to create something more with those that group.
Yeah, I love it.
So this is great. We've been gotten to know one another, a lot more. But this is the time where I turn over to you to tell us about your failure story. Like what happened. So give us a little bit context of where it happened, what it was, how old were you,
Yeah,
all of those types of things. Like give us a
sure.
little bit.
I can feel
Mhm.
my toes curling already. So the failure, I mean, there are many failures that I could have
Yeah.
chosen, and I think even just the like, what is your best fail, is such a like profound question to be asking yourself, and kind of
Yeah.
delving into, and you're relearning from all the process of just thinking through like, which one am I going
Yeah.
to share with Alison,
Yeah.
and what makes it a best fail. But the one that I've
Yeah.
chosen is, and I think I'm really rubbish. Like, I'm a bit of a time traveler. I think it's maybe 5 years ago,
So,
possibly
yeah.
six
Yeah.
years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was my first ever like attempt at a retreat, and
Mhm.
like delivering a well-being retreat. And I'd done like events through leadership stuff, and but ultimately I'd set up as a coach. I was practicing kind of coaching. It was going to be one of my like key public um, events as well. And yeah, it was a really tricky thing to understand. I was trying to kind of maybe shift the focus of it. I'd done all the marketing myself, like the leaflet. This is still the era where we created leaflets, so that kind of gives you an idea of how long ago it was. And tried really, really hard. I'd coordinated with a venue. Had particular, like, with hiring in other people to do other bits of it. And I think I could have up to something like 15 places on it, and I sold one ticket, and I had to pull it. And it was a real like dancing around with time for ages, until it got to the point where it was going to cost me loads and loads of money, in terms of trying to do anything, cancel it and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And obviously I couldn't have just run it with one person. Yeah, and just like the bit of the trauma of having to postpone it. And then, there was always a part of me that understood that I would learn from it, but it didn't take away from the fact that it felt like a really heavy blow, particularly fairly early
Mhm.
on in my own kind of business, and doing
Yeah.
that. I mean, the amazing thing is that the one person that did buy the ticket had bought into me. You know, they hadn't bought into purely to that, and we had this amazing kind of then ongoing coaching relationship kind of after they just
Nice.
converted to like a one-to-one coach. They didn't, I can't remember like how we done it, whether I refunded them and then they started again or whatever,
Yeah.
but that, you know, that something still good came out of that in terms of that. And you know, now I'm like, I smile, and even thinking about what to share with you about it, and I'm now running, you know, this year I'm running 3 retreats because the other ones have sold
Look
out.
at that.
And you know, so
Yes.
like it's one of those things that I think is a really lovely example of failure, because actually beyond those like 5 or 6 years when that happened, success has come out of it. And you know, I hate the
Yeah.
word success, but like in the term of actually achieving and learning from it, it was really positive. But blimey, now when we think about that like 3-year-old version of me and that scary, embarrassed failure, that was definitely
Yeah.
present, part of the committee of
Yeah.
that process, of digesting that. And just, you know, I think one of the things that I really reflect on about that experience is the the failure that we have for ourselves, or the failure where we're seen, you know, like, and there's a difference whether we fail on our own. Certainly for me
Yeah.
personally, is easier to digest than failing in the eye of others, you know, like being seen or
Yeah.
viewed by others. And a lot of it is still like just made up stuff for ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
you know, the amount of time I probably misspent on, oh, what does the venue think about me, or you know, or
Right.
what will the people that have heard me promote it and now I've cancelled it, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I just wouldn't give that any time or attention. But certainly in that early experience of that failure, of like actually I was probably navigating more of the, what do I think other people feel about me, rather than like my own
Mm.
failure. And I don't even think of myself as very externally referenced. You know, I'm quite kind of sure
Yeah.
of myself in a lot of ways. So to like be shifted into a feeling and experience of like having to kind of suss out what I thought everyone else might think about this version of failure as well, was like of quite an interest. It was interesting because there's still a part of my mind that detaches from the experience and goes, "Whoa, what would a coach think about?" You know, like, what can I learn from this from an academic point of view?
Yeah.
So there was still definitely a bit of that, but yeah, that's my failure.
Yeah. I when I asked you a question, you said your toes are curling.
Yeah, they are. They are. So there's still something still in there about
Yes. And but then, and I wonder if this is all part of it too, because then you went into like just having a perspective of recognizing that part of that, maybe part of the toe curling, but part of the experience was really coming to grips with what other people were thinking about it. Like if you look back at that time, when you think about, if you were able to separate out, you know, the perspective of others, like what were you feeling about yourself personally?
such a great question, because I think, you know, a lot of it came down to the frustration of just really wanting to do it. And this is
Yeah.
like definitely a theme for me personally, and I think with a lot of clients as well. It's not always like the not being like not success or whatever. Sometimes it's just the like disappointment of not being able to see the thing
To,
through. As
yes.
well. So I was really looking forward to it. There's little that I choose to do in life, even if it's really hard, where I don't think I'm looking forward to this, even if it's taking
Yeah.
me really outside of my comfort zone. It's just the way that I kind of like choose to do things. And I think so
Yeah.
just some of the disappointment about like not having been able to achieve it, and then kind of not really having at that initial point the clarity of the why.
Hmm.
You know, like if it was a specific, you know, piece of feedback where people were going, I'm not buying that because it's too expensive, or I
Yeah.
don't like your face, or you know, whatever it is. But at least then you've got the feedback, you've got the clarity, you've got the context, and you either can help, well, certainly I find that I can either help myself beyond that, you know, through belief
Hmm.
change work, or you know, just seeing things differently, or gaining skills to mitigate that next time. But I think
Yeah.
that vagueness of the failure, like not really being
Mm.
sure with what it was that left it to fail. And of course, over time, and then now doing and running retreats that are successful and do go ahead, and kind of probably gleaned a lot from the reflection over the years of running different events and stuff, and that have had like high turnover and not. And
Yeah.
so I think it was the vagueness which creates that
Mm-hmm.
quite confusion state as well of like, well, what is, like, I just need clarity on how I can then do that differently next time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, some of that is just like deep reflection, isn't it? Some
Yeah.
of it is technical stuff, but some of it's learning from your own way of doing and being to gain insight of how you would do it differently next
Yeah.
time. But I think, yeah, like a lot of it was just like the frustration. Like I was really looking forward to doing it. I'm confident with my delivery style. I know who the people are that I can help, and
Yeah.
that definitely been that's grown in confidence because of failures like that, I think. But yeah, like looking back now, like the leaflet was all over the place. Like I wouldn't even know whether it was for me. Like really cringe, like
Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
proper like there's
Yeah.
like 10 different people designed this leaflet. Like
Yeah.
what is going on here? So I can smile about those things, but yeah, I think disappointment in it was certainly in this example of, I know for a lot of people like the failure can be more about personally they've done something wrong, but certainly for me it was more like the frustration of, oh, I just wanted to do that, it was going to be good, and
Yeah.
how can I learn from this, how can I speed this up, and just that impatience then of wanting the learning to happen instantaneously and just like everything
Yeah.
to be fixed again and just crack on and
Yeah.
move on with it, and then knowing
Yeah.
in practicality that's not it.
Yeah.
And also I think, like really wanting to be, I've got such a strong value about like creating impact and purpose. And
Mhm.
so when something gets in the way of that, because it can be like it needs recovery, because it's a case of, that you could have helped people. There's lots of people
Yeah.
in the world who need that kind of help. What was it that stopped them getting to that?
To give it from you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many things there because you talked about, first of all, being able to differentiate, the external, like the perception that you fight with, because we are social beings, so there's always a part of us that has a consideration for how others might be perceiving us, because we don't want to be ousted from our group. We want our
Mm,
group to see us and to see value within us. So there's part of that we've got to deal with. But I think that there was something really, I think, instructive about understanding, so me personally, what's the impact? Like, how is this impacting me? So, like,
mm,
for you, it was that disappointment of not being able to see this program come to fruition, not being able to help the potential people that could be helped. So, and I think there is something, like, when you're able to identify, like, what is that impact, or what is that feeling, what's that pain, what's that point, or whatever, that this failure has kind of tapped or touched for you, then it makes it easier going forward to kind of to start
mm.
to recover, but also to have it, to make sure that it doesn't happen again, because you know exactly what it is that was the problem. The problem for you was that you didn't have the impact, you weren't able to help. So then what do I need to tweak about this for next time?
Yeah, exactly. And I think now there's so much nourishment that's come from it, in being able to then, because I have always been like adventurous, I have always wanted to take risks, and I've recognized that with that will come failure, and actually it's how do you resource yourself for the not expectation of it, but acceptance that that is part of growth and change and things like that, as well. And I always talk about it's not mistakes, it's mistakes, and like separating
Yes.
that up. That's like one of my little JK isms. I'm
I love it.
Yeah, and do you
Mistakes.
know what
Yeah.
else really helped me is my one of the guys that I trained with. He says this thing, and it's like, someone else's opinion is none of your business. And I because
I
I'm like, it's
love
not saying don't be caring or don't be like conscientious that other people have feelings, but
but
actually if you're making other people's opinions your business in trying to like
yeah,
recover from your own failure, like is not, that's not at the point of feedback, that's not of the point of, you know, like learning. This is just saying if you're preoccupying your mind with what does other people think about me, it's actually none of your business.
no, it's,
And that really helped me, and kind of seeing this whole mistake thing of like, okay, I've had one take, you know. We all love the bloopers at the end of a movie, don't we?
exactly.
Like I'm just thinking like, okay, they're just mistakes, in terms of that kind of thing as well. But I mean, it took me, you know, I can talk about it in a delightful way, and I really, really like, I love working with failure, you know, and helping people understand that and navigate their own like mistakes, through
Yeah,
coaching and stuff. But it doesn't take away from the fact that like it's deeply traumatic sometimes, and like
yeah,
it really
yes,
like for a day or two it really burnt me out. Like I ended up being in bed like crying, and I knew that just like I just was dying, like delighting in kind of, I want to go to sleep now because I know I'll feel different about this in the morning. You're like that turning
yeah,
point where that day that I decided to cancel it, and I had to do all of like navigating that, and I'm just like, I'm not one of these people that will make like a fake kind of, I know that for some people that works, but for me, like I won't go, oh, due to unforeseen circumstances, like I just told
yeah,
that person we haven't got enough
yeah,
people have had to cancel it. Like that for me was the
yeah,
easiest, like the honest route.
yeah,
But like, you know, just navigating all the practicalities, and oh, you've lost money there, and you know, and I've not gone ahead, and I was like in bed like proper tears, and
yeah,
my husband came in, and thought he'd come to console me, and he had his phone out and was taking a picture of me, and
no,
I was like, what are you doing?
what?
Thinking this is like really off brand for him. He's and
Yeah,
he said, "Oh, I'm taking this picture of you because when you're on the stage telling the story of this, because of all of your success, we've got this picture for you to look back on."
oh
And
man,
like I like paused for a minute. I was like quite like a lot, like just taken back by it, because it was just such a profound statement of like, I
yeah,
believe in you. And so even though I
yeah,
was saying like you should listen to other people's opinions, I think there is something in that, like that support, that connection. And it just
yeah,
jolted me. I mean, I still needed a good sleep, and I still needed to process it
of course,
emotionally. But like that, just that like concept of, okay, yeah, this is just one of many. And he wasn't necessarily saying I needed to be a keynote speaker on a stage that we're talking about failure, but it was that acknowledgement of, you know, you can move on from this, and that this feeling now will feel important in the future. And when, you know, a few years ago when I ran my first successful retreat in nature, aligned with what I'm do, you know,
yeah,
at my core, like when I'd kind of
yeah,
figured out stop failing for myself
yeah,
and do my own thing, then you know when
yeah,
I'm stood in the woods and like watching people wild swim for the first time, and you know seeing people connect and all that kind of stuff, it's like that little moment of him taking that picture, is it comes into mind, you know, of me kind of looking like
oh,
this little, like a little crying
yeah,
mole in my bed, really comes to mind, because it replenishes the joy of
yeah,
the achieving it in the
yeah,
long
yeah,
term as well. So as much as at first I was like, "What are you doing?" Like I'm really grateful that he did do that, because it's anchored in part of the story of like, you can keep going, and it doesn't mean you have to keep pushing through, but it's just about like, this is just part of the bigger picture, you know, and kind of zooming
yeah.
yourself back out to what the potential of a situation could be.
Oh man, I love that. Before we go on to the other part, there are two things that you mentioned that, it would be so nice to hear you to just expand a little bit on. One of the things that you talked about was having to navigate the ambiguity, number one, of not understanding or not having that feedback from others as to why
Yeah,
they did not respond. And in many cases, I think, even when you were talking about even like thinking about the perceptions of others, because that's ambiguity there. You're not
Mm,
sure how they're perceiving you, and there's a fear there, of rejection, of all of that social related things. And I'm just really curious as to how, like, what did you do to navigate that ambiguity so that you could kind of lay it to rest a little bit? Because I know is that ambiguity sometimes can cause us to have a problem.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure, because it's the abs. I talk about anxiety being like a clairvoyant, or it needs to look in its crystal ball and do all the what if, and it creates
Yeah.
all these narratives for us, and like anxiousness and stress kind of do the same thing, don't they? So
Yeah.
I think it's I'm definitely how it has then helped me is I'm much more proactive in looking at the ways I can receive feedback that would be useful. So,
Right.
whether that's market research or whether that's like getting feedback from a success to understand what it was that was
Mhm.
important. But in that particular example, it was finding peace in the not knowing. It was accepting. It's that point of letting go. We can learn from a failure, but sometimes the learning is to let it go, to not give it energy, to make peace with it, to actually not
Mm.
give it any more meaning than it needs to have. And I think there was definitely a moment in that, and a moment that I really like. It's sometimes not simply, but really kind of try and focus on which is the bit to learn from and which is the bit to let go of in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
feedback stuff, like helping yourself to be clear on how has the failure come about, and it's not going to happen in every single situation, obviously. But what are the practical mechanisms I can put into my business or my event planning or my coaching, that enables that feedback to get there. And I think like one of the things that has really stood out for me with failure is defining these two different routes, with like basically failure meaning like a lack of or a missing piece. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like how much of it is what we needed, like how much of it was like information or knowledge or capabilities, and how much of it
Mm-hmm.
was what we desired, like a belief about what we
Uh-huh.
should be, or
Yeah.
like a perception that we should have. And understanding what's the practical need versus the desired want in a failure.
Yeah.
So, like, am I feeling like a failure because I wanted to be, seen as the person who runs a retreat, like much more
Mm-hmm.
ego led, which it wasn't actually, that was very like internalized, or feeling like a failure because I should have known how to market or how to, and it definitely in that it was more of the like need stuff and then just kind of
Yeah.
learning from it. But that's
Yeah.
really helped me to kind of go like, how much of this is desire and want and belief kind of perceived failure, and how much of it
Yeah.
is like it's failed because of a need or knowledge or skill set or
Yeah.
understanding base or something like that. And that can be quite like a help. Certainly for me, it's been a helpful way of kind of understanding that ambiguity. It just kind of gives it two different things as well. But
I love that.
yeah, sorry.
And it also helps to give you something to focus on, because if you're able to differentiate between the want, as in what you desire, and the need, there's a skill to develop. Then it tells you, once you know what that skill is, or whatever that is, then there's something that you can work towards. There's something that you can improve that can bring you closer to that want. But I guess there's also that space of making sure that that want is legitimate. Yeah, because I do think that sometimes our wants are driven by what we think by our perception
Exactly.
of others, and so forth, rather than our real want.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the question of the way and of the importance of being able to, like in your situation, really be clear on that way, and how clarity on that way has brought you to where you are now. Like, how did you go about finding that way for yourself, and then how has that impacted
Mm,
or led you to developing your product to where it to your well, it's not a product because you're offering a service, developing that
mm.
service to where it is now.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I think is just in itself is an amazing question to ask ourselves in failure. Is like
Mhm.
how has it led us? What's gone beyond that? So I think that I learned to survive, like it was a survival, and it was everything was okay. Like I talk about the NGD rule, like no one's gonna die, and it like stop taking ourselves so seriously.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
retreat, like
Yeah.
So when that bit of catastrophe in your mind can kind of set in, I always like, let's use the NGD rule. Is anyone going to die as a result of this? Like, no,
Yeah.
they're not. Actually, stop taking yourself so seriously. I think, what
Yeah.
can I learn? But being patient for myself in that's a question that also needs to learn time and space, and that
Yeah.
the emotional like healing of it, healing is quite a strong word, but actually in that moment, like it
It
needed to
is.
heal, it needed a good sleep,
Yeah.
it needed someone taking a picture of me and being aspirational about my future, it all of those things,
Yes.
it needed snuggly pajamas on, and
Yeah.
I'm and yeah, and I think that it's really fascinating because I've been perceived throughout my life as someone who's quite resilient to like risk taking and managing failure, and hence why I've worked with like what a lot of people would see as complex kind of needs within communities and things like that. And I think it's being able to emotionally like regulate and recover, like how do you work
Yeah.
yourself through stress and anxiety, like that to me is just like gold dust, because like
Yeah.
being able to giving ourselves the will and permission to do that bit of work first before we try figuring out like the logic of learning has always been
Mm.
really important. I think the fact that at that point I was transitioning much more heavily into working with nature, and therefore like the natural recovery that's happening like in my mind and body from being out in the natural world more was significant. Like I can't remember exactly, but I'm more than likely will have taken myself for a few pondering walks, to make sense of things. I'm
Yes.
and I think that there was nothing not useful about the feedback of that failure. Even the ambiguity, even not really knowing, has invited me to ask questions about, well, you felt you were running this narrative that was too confusing and people didn't know who it was for. So
Mm-hmm.
how can I make it more concise? Or who do
Mm.
I want to work for? Or why do I feel I want to serve everyone? Wouldn't it make more, this is inner stuff, like wouldn't it
Yeah.
make more sense to just be really focused on just helping one group of people? And so it's helped with some of that conciseness and clarity, I think, inside.
Yeah.
But again, just like it feels good to survive failure, like certainly, to rise like beyond it and above it. And I'm there's something that is useful in that. Certainly personally, I wouldn't throw myself deliberately into failures. I'm not kind
Yeah.
of like a failure sadist or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I think that I've learned to see them as like nourishment, even in the most painful
Mm.
and discomforting parts of them. But it comes back to
JK.
not taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
And I totally appreciate that there might be people listening to this who have had failures that have had really serious consequences. And maybe that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't resonate, or it looks different of how you would navigate it. The types of failure, obviously, I'm drawing the examples of ones that you can recover, thumbs up, you can recover from. As well. So I think it's like, just find your own recipe for
Yeah.
surviving failure, which comes
Yeah.
from failing more, unfortunately.
That's true. Find your recipe for nourishment, because I love the word nourishment. So coming down to the end now, I always ask people this question, like, who is their unsung hero, that person that really helped them to navigate? And I know, from the conversation, your husband, he had such an impact.
Mm.
Like, that was such an impactful thing he did. So, like, is there anybody else, or was he your main like unsung hero during this time?
Yeah, well, obviously he does stand out in this, even with his like photography's accidental shaming, but that was also. But as
Yeah.
cliched as it sounds, I also celebrate myself in it, because ultimately,
Yeah.
when you fail, yeah, there's other factors, there's other people involved that might help with the learning and survival, but it's you that takes yourself beyond the failure. And I think
Yeah.
that we overlook celebrating that. We can be coy and shy and, oh no, we can't possibly celebrate ourselves. And actually, that's such a huge part of actually how you move through failure is the willingness to
Uh,
see that you survived it or made good of it or didn't cause as much issue as you needed to, or you've learned something from it. So, like, maybe it sounds a bit cliched or maybe it sounds a bit ego, but I'm going to claim it for myself because actually I could have
yes. Yeah.
easily given up. I could have easily gone no. And what I see from the people, when I'm sat on the summer solstice at 4 o'clock in the morning because everyone's wanted to get up and sit in silence and watch a sunrise on a retreat that happened last year, like, pat on the back that you kept going.
Come on. You did this.
That
You did
because
this.
we live in a really busy world, and the fact that
Yeah.
everyone's got up at 4 in the morning to sit in silence and watch the beautiful sunrise, like that,
Uh,
that does it for me. That's enough
yeah.
for me to go. You were right to keep on going. Like you've done the right thing for you, and I think we should celebrate all of our failures. That people have
Yeah.
failure parties, and I think even like the big like company like Google have like a failure room and stuff
They
like that. Like
do
they
feel
just
your yeah.
embrace failure.
Yes.
And you might look to other organizations and stuff that really are being dynamic and see that the ones that actually accept and have the psychological safety for failure and the businesses that don't fall, for ego, they see failure as a route to success are the ones that are the most dynamic.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. We are unsung heroes as well. So, final words. You've been through this, and this is your part of your entrepreneurial journey. Your journey as a business owner, and your journey period. Because this is JK, the
Mm.
person as well. Is there anything like any parting words or messages that you would want to leave with somebody who is also navigating a failure?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of shame and embarrassment in failure, and I think that can be really debilitating. So
Yeah.
name the shame that you're feeling to someone safe and trusting and an appropriate person to do it. Someone, make the request that you're not asking for fix, you're just asking for expression. Because I've really
Mm-hmm.
seen that certainly with clients that I work with who are expressing different stories of failure, that when we take the burden of shame out of it, that kind of like declutters the mind and the body to be able to start navigating the sense making of it as well. So I think definitely dispel the shame with someone that you trust, that you can just name that to, that's not going to try and fix it for you, because that can, you've got to be ready for solutions, haven't you? Like sometimes it's just
Yeah,
about
yeah,
processing. And I think
yeah,
the other thing is like naming the feelings that are showing up
yeah,
like in that. Because I think that's a really powerful way of them being able to know what the solution is, as
yeah,
well. And yeah, they're like, figure out, is it a want? Was it desire that's failed, or is it a need? A practical need?
yeah.
And
Need.
it's just like, how do we simplify the sense making of the things that we failed at? Would be my thing. But yeah, with someone you trust, not everyone, not someone that's going to fix or doubly shame you, or
Yeah,
or fulfill the belief that you might have about yourself of being a failure. You are not a
yeah,
failure. The
yeah.
situation has gone awry. There has been a mistake, but your failure is not who you are. It's a thing that's happened to you or a thing that's
See,
done.
exactly. I love it. Thank you so very much, JK.
Yeah,
This is the second iteration of this conversation.
absolutely.
And
Take
it
two.
was, and it was excellent. Again, excellent as well.
Imagine what we
So,
do by take 10.
I mean, like, it will be perfection.
Who wants that? Who wants that?
What exactly? We'll be saying the bar too high for other people and then for the rest of my guests as well. So we'll not do that to them.
Yeah, it's been really
Oh
lovely
my
to talk to you
goodness.
about it, Alison. Thank you.
You are most welcome. A deep thank you to JK for sharing her story with such honesty, nuance, and grace. If you'd like to connect with her, you'll find the details in our show notes. If Best Feels resonates with you, the best way to support us is to share it. Send it to a friend, leave a review on your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube at Best Feels Podcast. Do you have a story of your own? We'd love to hear it. Email us at info@mybestfails.com and let's keep building this brave archive of our best fails. And if you're currently navigating a failure, personal, professional, or somewhere in between, and want a space to reflect and explore what it means for you, head to the show notes to book a discovery call with me. Failure is a community resource. Don't hoard yours. Share it. You never know who it might help or what it might heal. Until next time.